Why do you Christian women not understand what grace is? Because you've been told, I guess, all your life. If you've been in the Christian church, ever how long you've been in it, whether it's a little while or all your life, the entire time you've been there, you've probably been told that grace is unmerited favor. But have you read Titus 2:11 and 12? And have you looked it up in the Strong's Concordance, G5485? Grace, charis or charis, if you pronounce it charis, the word charisma comes from that. But charis was a goddess of some kind that had great influence over the hearts of people or men. And so that's where the word grace comes from, divine influence on your heart. It's conviction. It's what it actually is, to obey. So if you read Titus 2:11 and 12, Titus 2:11 tells you that the grace of God that bringeth salvation has appeared unto all men. So do you think that everyone is saved and everyone is okay, right? Everyone's good to go because the grace has appeared to everyone. I'm sure you wouldn't agree with that. You have to obey grace. Grace is something you have to obey because it's conviction for you to obey God. Because it says in Titus 2:12 that it teaches you something. It teaching us to deny ungodliness and worldly lust, that we should live righteously and soberly in this present world. Righteously and soberly. It doesn't say anything about coddling you in your sin or turning it. And see, it says that in the scriptures say that there were men that crept in and turned the grace of God into lasciviousness. So what's lasciviousness? Well, it's shamelessness, really. It allows you to remain in sin and to sin and come before Jehovah in your sin, shameless in your sin. In other words, you can keep doing whatever it is. You can keep making your graven images. You can keep doing pagan idolatry. And it's okay, because you're delivered to do all these abominations. You've turned the grace of God into lasciviousness, because grace is not unmerited favor. That's a lie, because you can't read Titus 2:11 and 12 and get from that it's unmerited favor. You're not saved by unmerited favor. The grace of God brings salvation when you obey the grace. When you let that divine influence on your heart, that conviction that you have when you don't ignore that and do despite unto the Spirit of grace. Because you can do despite unto. Grace is something you can do despite unto. You can't do despite unto unmerited favor. Unmerited favor would mean no matter what I do, I'm okay. That's lasciviousness. But grace is a spirit. And it says that you can do despite unto the Spirit of grace. So, how much more sore punishment will you be thought worthy if you have done despite unto the Spirit of grace? So, grace is not unmerited favor. Grace you have to obey. Grace is divine influence. It's conviction. You're supposed to be denying ungodliness. So, in the last days, Jacob's going to be raised up. That's the prophecy. Jacob the servant is going to be raised up, and ungodliness is going to be turned away from Jacob. He's going to be raised up by the Spirit of grace, the election of grace, according to the election of grace. That's what it is. To be the very elect, you have to obey that grace. According to the election of grace. That means Jacob's going to get convicted of sin and start turning away from sin. So in order to be Jacob, you have to deny the ungodliness. You have to deny sin. You have to turn from your sin. He's going to turn ungodliness away from Jacob. He's going to turn iniquity away. What is sin? The transgression of the law. Sin is disobeying the 10 Commandments, and the 2 covenants are the rainbow covenant and the 10 Commandments. The eating clean part, you have to do that too. Even though it's not part of the 10 Commandments, the covenant made with Noah is an eternal covenant. And he's going to come the whirlwind judgment comes in when tribulation starts. Jehovah's going to come with a whirlwind. And he's going to judge by fire and by sword. And he's going to destroy those that are eating swine's flesh. He's serious about this rainbow covenant. Because those of you that think, since Jesus came, everything's good, all's done away with, we can do whatever we want. No. He would not destroy anyone in tribulation if it was okay to eat swine. And why is it not okay? Okay? Because the coming of the Messiah did not change anything. It didn't redeem the swine. It didn't change the purpose of the swine. It didn't change the makeup of the swine or the shellfish, the shrimp, the oysters. It didn't change any of that. And he told us not to eat it because it's nasty and not good for us. But it's also, it's also a heart thing. It's your heart posture. He wants to see you, whether you're going to obey him and whether you're going to have a humble and contrite spirit that trembles at his word, or whether you're going to be rebellious. Because those that eat swine's flesh, and yet they're self-righteous. Oh, we go to church and we don't smoke, and you shouldn't say cuss words, you shouldn't say shit, or something like that. Those are the ones that are smoking his nose. Those that get dressed up and they go to their churches every week and they put their ties in and they think they're good and they're okay. They're self-righteous. That's self-righteousness. And he hates it. Being ignorant of the righteousness of Jehovah, they went about to establish their own form of righteousness. That's not that's not ungodliness that he wants to turn you away from. Smoking and saying certain words and not going to the Sun God Day churches. That's not what the conviction brings. What the conviction brings is for you to obey him and not commit adultery and fornication on Jehovah. To keep the commandments, not to have other gods before him, not to do pagan idolatry, to keep the Sabbath day, not to call Jehovah God by the name of Baal, Jesus. Because Jehovah is one Lord, one God. And Yeshua is the Son of God. And he came only to bring his Father's words, to bring us what his Father said to do, the 10 Commandments, everything desired at Horeb. Jehovah said he was going to put his words in his mouth. So he came speaking his Father's words. But yet the church turns Jesus. Yeshua is the Son of God, and he's not God. The church wants to turn Jesus into God because that goes along with their unmerited favor. Because Jesus is lawlessness. Jesus is lasciviousness. He lets you go and do whatever you want to. Have your graven image. Do your pagan idolatry of Christmas and Easter. Oh no, Sun God Day is the day we do now. We don't have to do the Sabbath. So, if you're following Jesus, you're not obeying any grace that's been given to you to turn you away from your iniquity. Jacob's going to obey the grace. Jacob rises up to warn the people that they need to obey the grace. What you're supposed to do is obey the grace so that ungodliness and iniquity can be turned from you, and then you're supposed to go and warn other people and deliver the grace unto them, the conviction, so that ungodliness can be turned away from them. That's what we're supposed to do. That's loving your neighbor as yourself. First of all, you love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. You obey the grace to keep the 10 Commandments, which is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Deuteronomy 6:5. And this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments. His commandments are not grievous. Once you've done that, then you go and obey the second elevated commandment in the law, to love your neighbor as yourself, which is not to go out and give them sandwiches and be nice and say nice things to them. That's not what Jehovah's definition of loving your neighbor as yourself is. Loving your neighbor as yourself is that once this grace has been delivered unto you and you've obeyed it, you deliver the grace unto them. You go out and you teach your neighbor to stop sinning. You rebuke your neighbor when in sin. And you teach them to keep the 10 Commandments so that they can obey the grace and teach others to obey the grace. So that's what the Messiah came to do, to turn iniquity away from Jacob. I mean, and you can be Jacob, but you prefer to be rebellious. See, to be the very elect, what you have to do is obey the grace and let ungodliness be turned from you. Obey the conviction so that ungodliness can be turned from you, and you can go and start turning ungodliness away from others. But the reason how shall Jacob arise? He is small. He's going to be small because no one else wants to obey the grace. Many are called, few are chosen. Few choose to obey the grace and do the work.